Welcome. Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi Chullin, 1 week at a time. This is our 9th class, and today we are going to be reviewing Daf 55 through Daf 60. I don't know why it keeps dropping. Okay. We are going to continue speaking on Daf 55 about we're going to speak about the spleen. If the spleen is punctured, so then the animal is a treifah, meaning it is not kosher. If it's removed, then it is kosher. And this week we will discuss what does it mean a treifah. We had mentioned this last time that the assumption is it's going to die at a certain point, and you'll see. We'll discuss it more later today. The spleen, we said, if it was punctured or some of it isn't there, so then the animal is a treifah. If it's completely removed, then the animal is kosher. And the Gemara gives a case where, let's say you cut out a piece of the fetus that's inside a pregnant animal. You can actually eat that. It's not considered part of the animal. But if you cut out a part of the spleen or the kidney, you can't eat it. It's considered what we call ever minachai, meaning a piece or a limb of the animal that was taken when the animal was alive. So here we see that this animal has part of its spleen or kidney removed, and we said you can't eat it. This implies that the animal itself is okay. The Gemara says no, the animal is also a treifah, and you're not allowed to eat from the spleen or the kidney from this living animal. If one kidney, we're going to get, we'll get to the eggs and the bird in a minute. If one kidney is diseased, right, there are two kidneys in human beings, but also in animals. If one of the kidney is diseased, so then the animal is a treifah. And that's only if it reaches the center of the kidney. If there's a hole in the thin part of the kidney, it's still kosher. If it's in the thick part, then it's a treifah, meaning not kosher. But if the thickness is at least a dinar remains, so then the animal is still kosher. Anything that invalidates the lungs. Remember, we talked last time a lot about holes in the lungs. Remind me at the end, I listened to a very interesting class about what makes things kosher and about the lungs. So remind me to tell you about that later. But anything that invalidates the lungs, so then it's okay, that same thing is okay in the kidneys, and the opposite. So the Gemara says, really, right? The Gemara doesn't like when we give blanket rules because generally there are exceptions. So what about pus in the lung, which is okay, but in the kidney, it's not okay? They say, no, you actually cannot compare different organs. Each organ is unique, and therefore don't compare it. Let's say the kidney shriveled up, like very small. So then the animal is a treifah. If the jaw was removed, if you can still feed the animal, basically force feed the animal, so then it's still kosher. If you cannot, meaning the animal's going to die because it can't eat, so then it is a treifah. If the lungs became petrified, so then if it's because of a disease, then it's kosher. But if it's because of a person, meaning out of fear, this is petrified. If it's because of a person, so then it is a treifah, meaning not kosher. Let's say you have shriveled up lungs. So the Gemara tells you what to do. If it's the summer, you should soak them in cold water. in a white vessel, and if they basically reinflate, so then if they look healthy, it's kosher. If not, then not. In the winter, you soak them in warm water in dark vessels, and the same idea. If they become healthy again, then great, and if not, then it's not kosher. A flayed animal, an animal that does not have skin on it, which is called gluda. So it's actually a machloket, or no, everyone agrees that it's a treifah, meaning you can't eat it, but, right, and basically Rabbi Meir changed his position. However, if there is a little bit of skin left on the backbone, then the animal is kosher. Does it need to be all the way down or just in pieces? Again, that's a machloket. Or maybe only you need the skin at the bottom, or anywhere, as long as there's a little skin, that will save the animal. The skin under the hooves doesn't count, doesn't save the animal. It's not really called skin, right? Because the hooves are like a nail material. The skin under the tail is actually called basar, meaning flesh, and therefore not called skin. But again, certain areas like the skin of a young calf or under the hooves or under the tail, under the genitals, are called flesh. Sorry, but or no, they are called skin, and therefore it will keep an animal kosher, and it will not be a treifah. Okay, daf 56. The next Mishnah now talks about treifot in birds. Till now, we mentioned the signs, the things that make an animal, meaning a behima, a treifah. Now we're going to talk about birds. Now, everything that we mentioned for animals are equally signs for a treifah for a bird, but we're going to add a few more. So again, parallel to what we did before, a hole in the esophagus, if the trachea is cut, if a weasel bit the bird on its head. So apparently weasels have very sharp teeth, and I guess the bird's head is either small or very thin, so that is problematic. If there's a hole in the gizzard, which is one of the stomachs. Oh, actually I have a picture. Hold on one second. Wait. Okay, wait, not this picture, but hold on. We'll get to those in a second. But here's what the bird looks like. So that's the crop and the gizzard. So if there's a hole in the gizzard, or if there's a hole in the small intestines, if it fell into the fire and its insides got burnt, if the insides are now green, it's a treifah, and if it's red, so then it's kosher. If a person stepped on it or hit it against the wall, if it's still fluttering and it survives for 24 hours, and then you shecht it, so then it actually is kosher. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to talk about these birds. So if, let's say, again, it has a hole maybe in its head, and you put a finger in the bird's mouth and you push up, if the brain comes, I know it sounds gross, I'm sorry, but if the brain comes out of the hole in the head, so that means that the lower membrane was punctured. Just so you should know, like in brains, so you actually, in all creatures, not all creatures, in these creatures, and in human beings, you have two layers of a membrane that surround the brain. There's the inner membrane, and then the outer membrane. So here, we're going to say that if the outer membrane was punctured, so then it's not necessarily a sign of being a treifah. And then basically if you push on the top of the mouth, so it puts pressure on the head. And if nothing comes out, then nothing was punctured. What's this issue with the weasel? So weasel has thin teeth and they're curved. So when it punctures the skull, the brain basically, like the membranes get punctured, but not in line with each other. And therefore you can't test where there is a puncture. Waterfowl, if the skull is cracked, so then it is a treifah because the membrane is so soft. Therefore, you don't even check it, but you do need to check with regular birds. If the skull is broken and the membrane is whole, so then it's kosher. And again, right, you have to check it. How do you check it? You either check it in the sun or with water or with like a straw to see like where it was cracked. And we talked about if it inhales smoke, basically. So we said if the internal organs are green, so even a little bit, it's a treifah. If the liver became green next to the small intestines, then it's a treifah because it fell into the fire. Right, so if something, right, like the gizzard, the heart, or the liver, if they turn green, so then it's a treifah because they are usually red, but the small intestines are usually green. So therefore, if it's green, that's okay. Right, so as I said, heart, kurkevan, the liver are usually red. Therefore, if they're green, it's a treifah. If you boil them in water and they turn red, so then it is kosher. If something is usually red and you boil it and it turns green, so then it's a treifah because it's revealing what actually is going on. If the bird fell into the fire and you cook it and you check it, and then you can eat it, or you can even eat it without actually boiling it and checking it. Okay, the next Mishnah, what is kosher? So we just did what is not kosher about birds, which is a treifah. What is kosher with birds? So if the gargeret is cut or small, right, a small cut or cut in the length, or if a weasel struck it on the head, but not like by the brain. So then it's okay. If the crop, right, which you can see here on the picture, if the crop was punctured or even removed, it's still kosher. If the intestines came out, but they were not punctured, if the wings or legs are broken, or if the feathers were plucked, all of these things, the bird is still kosher. But if the small feathers were removed, this is like the down of the bird, if that was removed, so then it is a treifah. Okay, so now the Gemara explains that they ruled in Ono about the uterus, that it's like the crop. So similar laws. The top of the crop is, right, you could see that it's, the crop is the bottom basically of the esophagus. So the top of the crop is ruled, like we view it as like the esophagus. So all the laws remain the same. For the intestines, if they came out and then they got like flipped over, so then it's a treifah. They have to actually be put back in place the right way. Then it is kosher. Okay, daf 57. If the leg is broken, as long as the bone doesn't protrude from the skin, so then it's kosher. And Rava used to check the junction of the sinews. This in Hebrew is called the tzomet hagidim. This is where the all the sinews came together on the leg. It was near the ankle. And if this area is whole, so then it is kosher. If the wing is dislocated, it might have punctured the lung, right? Because the lung is near there, and therefore it is a treifah. And we know that birds have very small lungs, so we have to be very careful in case something was punctured. We don't have issues with the lungs if the bird fell or it was burnt, because the ribs actually protect the lungs much more than they do with other animals. Okay. Now, if the leg is dislocated, it's kosher. Another opinion is it's actually a treifah. So in Israel, they were actually more stringent than they were in Bavel. Again, as we said, the sinews, the tzomet hagidim, if there's a problem there, so then it's a treifah. But if it's cut off at that level, so then it is kosher. Another opinion is actually that is a treifah. Again, it's different areas on the leg. If the cut, if it's cut, so then it does make it a treifah, or maybe it actually is kosher. Now, then the Gemara talks on Daf 57 about stories of the different sages who looked at animals with dislocated leg. Again, a dislocated leg in a bird would be a treifah. Rebbe actually said it's kosher. So again, as we mentioned earlier, right, there are different either traditions. Some people had more expertise than others, and therefore we see different opinions. The halacha is that if the trachea has a hole, so even if you patch up that hole, it will still die, and therefore it is a treifah. A dislocated leg is a treifah, but if you can make a splint and it could live, maybe that's okay. The Gemara says, no, it's only going to live temporarily, and therefore it will be a treifah. Excellent question about comparing it to a sacrifice. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay, the Gemara talks about a person, a sage who's an askan, like la'asok. He's constantly experimenting. He wants to discover what is what. So this is Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta. He used to check different opinions, and he took a bird. So he really, it's fascinating. Like, it's describing like mamash, like science experiments. So he took a bird whose down was pulled out. Remember, we said that does make a treifah. And then he warmed up the bird and not like cooked it, but put it in a warm space. And the down actually grew back. And therefore it would not be a treifah. The Gemara says, no, even if it would grow back, it's still going to die within 12 months. And therefore it is a treifah. Or no, it's not going to die. And therefore it is not a treifah. Rabbi Shimon went to investigate. There's actually a verse in Mishlei, in Proverbs. So he actually did an experiment. He wanted to find out if ants have a king, right? We know that bees have a queen. So he says, I wonder, he said, so in Mishlei, it says that ants don't have a king. So he wanted to do an experiment. What was the experiment? He tricked the ants to come out, and then he killed like the ants that like told them to come out. And he tricked basically the ants to come out of the hole, and then all the ants killed the one ant that like tricked them to come out. And he said this proves that there's no king, because if there would be a king, he wouldn't have let all these ants kill this one like poor ant, which was like very interesting. Okay, so those were his like animal experiments. Okay, now for what we've been talking the whole time. What is the sign of a treifah? It means that the animal is going to die within 12 months. Another opinion, right? So not everyone agrees. Another opinion is that if it's a female, it cannot give birth anymore, meaning it's because it's I guess because it's damaged or injured, it cannot give birth. Or another sign that if it heals from whatever injury it has, it's not a treifah. And if it gets worse, it's a treifah. And the last opinion is that it's going to die within 30 days, right? So you see there's actually a big machloket what makes a treifah. And the law is that a treifah actually could give birth and it actually could still heal, but it's going to die within, again, a certain amount of time, and therefore it is a treifah. Okay, Daf 58 speaks about the eggs of a treifah hen. Again, the mother, the hen, is a treifah, and now there are eggs inside. So we say the first ones that were laid are, you can't eat, they're treifah. After that, they're fine. Now, here it's interesting. It seems to be discussing actually fertilized eggs, and because the father fertilized whatever, right? The male fertilized these eggs, because there are two entities involved with these eggs. We say that the eggs are not treifah. They're fine. In Hebrew, the term is ze v'ze gorem. Whenever we have two I guess variables or two things involved. So then it makes it permitted. Now, and here's someone mentioned about the sacrifices. The offspring of a treifah cannot be used for a sacrifice, right? Which is different than what we just said in terms of eating the animal. Or maybe it can be used, right? And actually, the Gemara says it depends when the animal became pregnant. And there's a machloket about, again, the fertilization of, or the parenthood of this offspring. And again, we do have the machloket about eating it, and not only for the sacrifice. So the question is it the same machloket for the sacrifice and for eating, or is there a distinction? So we say that if we're not talking about fertilized eggs, if the hen just warmed itself from the ground, so the eggs are a treifah because there was no other bird involved with these eggs. Or if the eggs come from a bird that we're not sure if it's a treifah, right? What we would call a zefek treifah. So the first batch, you wait, you hold on to it to see if it produces more eggs. If it doesn't produce more eggs, it shows that it's a treifah, and therefore the first eggs are prohibited. If it has more eggs, again, as we said before, one of the criteria is that a treifah cannot reproduce. Therefore, if it does reproduce, it means that it probably isn't a treifah. Okay, if the animal was pregnant and then it became a treifah, is the offspring considered connected to the mother and therefore prohibited for a sacrifice or not? Again, that is the question. Okay, eggs, right? Again, here we're saying when is it considered part of the mother's body, right? So eggs are actually part of the body of the mother, and therefore, if the mother is a treifah, the birds are prohibited. But for an offspring, right? If we're talking about an offspring of the mother, that's different. It's seen as two separate entities, and therefore there would be a difference. Okay, so let's say you have an animal and you're not sure if it's a treifah. Again, you wait 12 months. If it's still alive, so then it's not a treifah. If it's a female, if it doesn't give birth or it doesn't reproduce, then it's not a treifah. Okay, the Gemara continues that creatures without bones, basically worms and things like that, don't live more than 12 months. And since we're talking about like the lifespan of animals, right? A gnat can't live more than a day. Flies don't live more than a year. And the reason they mention this is actually if you find them in produce, you know it hasn't been there for more than that amount of time, right? It's lifespan. Okay, an animal that has 5 or 3 legs, that is a blemish and cannot be used for a sacrifice. But here we're talking about the front legs. If it's a back leg, so then it's a treifah, meaning you can't eat it, because when it's extra, we view it as if it's not there, and we know that you can't remove the back leg. If you remove the back leg of an animal, it becomes a treifah, right? Because you basically cut the femoral artery and the animal is going to die. If the animal had an extra tube connecting 2 of its stomachs, it's a treifah. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's kosher and it's something that is common. Again, I think it's fascinating how Chazal, again, 1,500 years ago, understood the anatomy of animals, of birds. I think it's amazing. Animals that have 2 sets of intestines, it's a treifah. But in a bird, it is kosher. If they come out of 2 different places, but if they come from one place and it's still connected, so then it might be okay. Remember we mentioned the down of the bird. If you don't have it, if it was removed, it's a treifah. And basically the down combines with skin and flesh. When we're talking about in the world of sacrifices, they're all considered like one type of entity, and therefore they can combine to create the shiur, the measurement for improper intent. If you remember, we spoke about pigul. Okay. The next Mishnah discusses an animal that was seized by blood. It says that maybe it had labored breathing, or if it inhaled smoke, or it got a cold, or it ate hardufni, which is a toxic herb, or it ate the dung of a chicken, or it drank water that a snake drank from. All of these things, the animal is kosher. But if it ate poison or if a snake bit it, so it's not a treifah, but it's prohibited to eat it because it's dangerous. So again, we're making a distinction. Can you eat it or not? But what is because it's inherently not kosher, and the other is because it's actually dangerous to eat this meat. So now the Gemara explains that if it ate chiltit, it's also a treifah. Because it causes holes in the stomach. If a wild dog bit it, it's prohibited. Again, it's very dangerous because they knew about rabies. And again, the Gemara asks, what about poison is it poison for animals or poison for people, right? Depends what we are speaking about. Daf 59 mentions wolf's bane, which is a plant that is poisonous for animals. the Gemara brings a story of a deer with its hind legs severed, was brought to the house of the Reish Galuta. The Reish Galuta was the political leader in Bavel, and Rav said it was kosher, and Shmuel said, well, wait a minute, maybe it was bitten by a snake. So they didn't know what to do, so Shmuel said, let's put it in the oven and see what happens. So they put it in the oven, and it basically disintegrated, or it fell apart because it had venom in it. I don't know if that actually happens, but interesting to look into. And then the Gemara says, right, this is the sign, and we have mentioned this before, that God protects the righteous people from sinning and also from injury. Okay. From here, we are now going to move to signs that that make animals kosher. Okay, again, till now we discussed what makes a kosher type of animal, what makes it not kosher, right? Something's missing, a hole, of this or that. Now we're going to talk about how do we know which animals are kosher and which animals are not kosher. Okay, so the Mishnah tells us that the signs of kashrut, of what is kosher for animals, is actually from the Torah, but not birds, right? If you look at the Torah, we actually read it recently in Parshat Shavua. The Torah gives us a list of of not kosher birds, and it doesn't give us the sign, like what makes it kosher, what makes it not kosher. It just gives us a list. So now the Mishnah is going to tell us that if birds are predators, then they are not kosher. If they have, I think I have a picture of this. Hold on. Here. If they have an extra toe or a claw, if they have an extra toe and they have, let's go back to this, and if they have an extra toe, it is kosher, but they also need a crop and a gizzard, and the gizzard needs to be able to be peeled, so then it's kosher. If its toes, let me see. Oh, here. Okay. If its toes separate when they're on a perch, so you see how it's like a few in the front and either one in the back or a few in the back. So then it would be not kosher. Then not eggs now. Grasshoppers. So grasshoppers, if they have 4 legs and then 4 wings, here are the 4 wings, and they have 2 jumping legs, and the wings cover a majority of the body, then that grasshopper is kosher. And the one that's kosher is called a chagav. And fish, what makes fish kosher? If they have, in Hebrew, it's called snapir and kaskeset, which basically means fins and scales. And the Mishnah says they need at least 2 scales and 1 fin. Okay, now let's go to, hold on 1 minute. Here, we're going to talk, okay. Well, we're going to talk about horns in 1 minute. We're going to talk about the stomach, right? These are the 4 stomachs of the kosher animal. And we're going to talk about split hooves. Okay, so hold on 1 minute. Let's go back first. Okay, so animals that shoot, okay. Hold on a minute. Let's take a step back. The Torah tells us what makes animals kosher. They need to chew their cud, and they need to have split hooves. Okay, now the Gemara tells us animals that chew their cuds, they don't have upper teeth, like specifically the upper teeth. And that's therefore, if you see an animal that doesn't have upper teeth, it's a kosher animal. The Gemara says, but wait a minute, a camel chews its cud and it doesn't have upper teeth, but it's not kosher. Now, why is it not kosher? Because it doesn't have hooves, split hooves. So therefore, the Gemara tells us you need both. You need to chew its cud, it needs to chew its cud, and it needs to have split hooves. So why is this important? Let's say you're wandering in the desert and you find an animal with its hooves cut off and you don't know what animal this is. So if it doesn't have upper teeth, it's kosher, right? As long as you know that it's not a camel. If you find an animal without a mouth, right, you can't check the teeth. So you should check its hooves. And if it's split, you know it's kosher, right? As long as you know that it's not a pig, right? A pig has split hooves. Now, if you find an animal without the mouth, without the jaw, and without the hooves, so then you check the muscles on the back of the animal, and if it goes in two directions, basically lengthwise and widthwise, so then you know it's kosher. As long as you know that it's not a wild donkey. A wild donkey has this sign as well, and therefore, but the wild donkey is not kosher. Okay. A chaya is what we would call a non-domesticated animal, has the same signs, but if it's a chaya, if it's not domesticated, so you can actually eat the fats, the certain fat in the animal. If it's in a domesticated animal, sheep, goat, cow, you cannot eat it. If it's on a deer, so then you can eat it. So now, how do we know which not domesticated animal is kosher? So if it has horns and claws, so then it is kosher. So now the Gemara is going to talk about different types of horns. So one is that the horn needs to be layered, like it looks like it's one layer on top of the other. It also needs to have grooves, and it needs to be split, like you can see here in the middle, like antlers, which are split, right? And therefore, if the horns are not split, right, like the ibex or the gazelle, so then they have to be layered, curved, and scored. But if they're split, like the deer, so then they don't. And now there's a story of this type of goat that was brought to the Reish Galuta, and they didn't know if you could eat it or eat the fats of this animal. So the Gemara says, yes, they can eat it. And then since we're talking about different like deer and different like interesting animals, so there's an animal called a keresh, which is the deer of Bei Eli, which was a place. I don't think that they're talking about a mystical creature, but maybe like a rare creature. And it had one horn. I don't think it meant unicorn, but okay. It had one horn. And then there was this panther of Beit Eli, which apparently was huge. Okay. And since we're mentioning these animals, we now have a conversation between the Roman Caesar and Rabbi Yoshua. Okay, one second. Okay. Rabbi Yoshua, the Roman Caesar says to Rabbi Yoshua, your God is compared to a lion. He's like, but why would it do that? A lion can be killed. Like, why would your God be compared to a lion? So he says, no, it's compared to this lion of Bei Eli. So he says, okay, I want to see it. He's like, no, you can't see it. He's like, no, I want to see it. So Rabbi Yoshua prays, and this lion appears, but it's really far away. And when it roars, all the women in the area miscarried and the walls of Rome fell down, meaning it's such a scary lion. So then he's like, oh, okay, your God is actually scary. They continue the discussion. The Caesar says, I want to see God. And he's like, you can't see God. And he's like, but I want to see God. So he says, okay, in the summer, let's go outside and I want you to look at the sun. And he's like, I can't look at the sun. It's too bright. So he says, you can't look at the sun, and the sun is just a servant of God. You will think you can actually see God, which I thought was a very good image. Okay, Daf 60. Again, the Roman Caesar says, I want to prepare a feast for God. He's like, you can't. He's like, but I want to. He's like, no. There are too many people in God's retinue or, that come with him. So he's like, no problem. So he spends 6 months setting up this huge meal, and then the wind comes and blows it into the river. And then he does it again, and rain comes and ruins it. And he says, so Rabbi Yeshua says, you see, these are just the cleaners of God, right? Meaning rain and wind, they're the cleaners of God, and they, destroy your party, all the more so God. And he says, okay, you're right, I can't do this anymore. Then the daughter of Caesar says to him, I see that your God is a carpenter, right? Based on verses, I see he's a carpenter. I want him to make me this utensil. It's like a bobbin that's used to spin wool. So he's like, what are you talking about? So she's like, no, I want it. He's like, okay, fine. So what happened? God made her have leprosy, tzarat, and then because she had leprosy, she was told to sit in the marketplace, and she was given this bobbin so that she could spin wool. So then he says to her, do you like the gift that God gave you? And she's like, no, I don't like this gift, meaning she got what she wanted, but not in the way that she wanted. So she's like, no, tell him to take it back. I don't want this. And he says, no, God does not take back gifts. So if you got a gift from God, say thank you. Okay. Speaking of these signs, so here I'll show you the picture of here are different the hoofs, what they look like from the front, from the side, and the bones. Sorry, I forgot to mention this book that I screenshotted is called Signs of Kosher Creatures, from Rabbi Slifkin. He is the zoo rabbi. If you're ever in Israel, he has a natural history museum, a biblical natural history museum, where he talks about, again, this is a big thing of kosher animals, not kosher animals. So it's very interesting. Okay, so he says, the Gemara says on Daf 60 that an ox has a wide belly and he has hooves and a large head and a large tail, and it's the opposite in a donkey, right? A donkey, everything is narrow. So then the Gemara talks about Adam, the first human being, brings an ox as a sacrifice. This ox actually had one horn, and the horn was very big. Again, was it a unicorn? I don't know. And since we're talking about Adam and creation, so now we say that everything that was created in the beginning, right, in Breshit, is created in its full form, meaning it wasn't created as an infant and then it grew. It was created in its adult form. So that goes for animals. It also goes for trees, right? The trees as well. So it says that each tree grew separately, and then but the grass wasn't sure what it's supposed to do. So the grass wasn't commanded to grow separately, but it decided, right? The grass decided that it was going to grow, very separately, from each blade of grass comes out of the earth, in its in its own place. Okay, since we're talking about creation, so it says that God created the two lights, right? The meorot, which are the sun and the moon. So originally it says that they're created, and it seems to imply they're created equally, but then we know that the sun was larger and the moon was made smaller, and then the moon was like, right, so originally the moon was like, wait a minute, we can't share, like, you can't have two big luminaries in the sky. So God is like, oh, okay, I'll make you small. So he's like, but wait a minute, like, don't make me small. So God says, no, don't worry, you're so special. The Jewish people are going to have a lunar calendar. It's going to be about you. And the righteous people are also called small, like the moon. And therefore, be happy. And the Gemara says, no, the moon is still not happy. And therefore, it says that the Jewish people bring a sin offering, a korban chatat, on every new moon, every Rosh Chodesh. And it says that it's korban chatat leHashem, like for God. Now, normally we say it means we are bringing a sacrifice for God, like to God. But here the Gemara is saying it's actually a sin offering for God to atone for the fact that he diminished the moon, which is just, interesting. So again, back to creation, it says that the grass was created on day 3, but in the second chapter of Breshit, of Genesis, it says that nothing grew yet, and it was already day 6, right? The assumption is that the second chapter is speaking about the 6th day of creation. So how could it be that it grew on day 3, but on day 6 there wasn't anything? So really, the grass was created on day 3, but it was underground. It didn't grow yet. And it waited for Adam to pray to God. And then the rain came, and then it grew. And the Gemara says that God loves the prayers of the righteous people. And that's why we have this idea. Okay. Speaking of like different animals, there's an animal called a shisuah. It's this creature that has 2 backs and 2 spines, and the laws about it. And the Gemara says that because we're mentioning this Shisuah, it shows that God wrote the Torah, because how would Moshe or any other human being know about all of these random or rare animals? Okay, and from here, the Gemara talks about certain verses, that many verses seem extraneous, but really they are essential. And the Gemara goes through different numbers of these verses. Okay, hold on a minute. I'm going to stop sharing. I did want to mention, so I listened to this class about kashrut, about kosher meat and kosher animals. So I made a mistake. I don't know if I said it, but I think I made a mistake. Last time someone had asked, like, oh, how do we check all of these different, but we speak about all of these different signs that make an animal not kosher. So I was like, oh, they probably know how to do it, and they do it really quickly. So this rabbi actually said, we don't check all of these things. Unless there was a reason to check, meaning unless the animal, like we had, fell from the roof or there was some sort of trauma, then we're going to check the brain, the spleen, the heart, the liver. Otherwise, they actually do not check for these things. However, they do always check the lungs. And that's what we mentioned last time in terms of adhesions. Do we check for adhesions? Do we not check for adhesions? Are there holes? Are there not holes? So that is what he discussed. So I just wanted to clarify that last time I mentioned that I thought they did check all of these things, but they actually do not. Okay, I think we will stop here, unless, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. And then Be'ezrat Hashem, I think I could still make it. Next week, I think I teach till 8, but I should be back for 9 o'clock. So I think, let me just confirm that. Is that true? Yes. Oh, okay. Next week I should be fine, and we will have class regular day on Tuesday. So again, thank you for your flexibility.
Thank you.
Yes.
This is so much more interesting than the Babas. Thank you so much.
Okay, my pleasure. I'm so happy.
I
Yes.
have three things.
Okay.
Okay. About the ovum. In my history, in my work history, I worked in an egg products company in the States, and one of the
What
customers
company?
was an egg product,
Oh,
like egg yolks, egg whites, whole eggs. And they used to send tankers to Japan so they can make their sushi, whatever. I get a call from Nabisco, right? And at the time, I don't know today, but this is between 88 and 92. So at the time, 88 and 90, they were in kosher. So they called me from Nabisco and they asked me for the kosher certificate. So I asked my boss, what kosher certificate? Why would Nabisco want kosher certificate? He goes, no, that's the USDA certificate, and it says on it, kosher certificate, that there is no ovum in the eggs. In other words, they ran it through some sort of a X-ray type of thing, and then they would know if there was no that these weren't from a chicken.
Life.
Right, it wasn't from a chicken. Okay,
Wow.
so that's what they wanted to
Wow.
know. It wasn't.
Well, I just have to interrupt you because my grandfather, when they lived in Israel, his job was to hold up all the eggs in front of a candle to check the eggs.
To
So,
see
and this is
was there.
in the 40s, in Israel.
Yeah. So, and then you could see if it's already starting to develop. It was
Exactly.
fertilized.
Exactly.
The second thing you said about protecting the tzaddikim, I'm not saying I'm not tzaddikim, but I think Kadosh Baruch Hu is watching over me. I was living in the States, and I would go to the bakery on Friday to buy challah. At the time, I didn't know how to bake challahs myself. And so there was a parking area behind the storefront, and I parked there, and there was like the store of the bakery was under apartments. I parked the car, and I'm going to the bakery, and I smell this smell, and I'm going, I don't know what the smell is, but I want to vomit. I don't know what the smell is. It's disgusting. Okay, I go into the bakery, I gotta get my challah. I'm gonna fast forward like 2 months later, I'm at work, and I was working in a Jewish company, so we had 2 separate kitchens, and we had kitchenettes. We had 2 separate sinks, 2 separate microwaves, 2 separate refrigerators, one for kosher, one for not kosher. And I took a walk during the lunch break, and I come back, and that same smell is there. So I asked my assistant, I said to her, what's that smell? So she goes, don't worry, I did it in the non-kosher section. I said, but what is it? So she said, bacon. Now, I don't know bacon from Adam. I didn't know what I was smelling. I just knew that it was disgusting for me, even though I'm told that bacon is delicious. I don't know, but I could not stand it. So anyway, without even knowing. And the third thing was you said about the split hooves. There's the expression in Yiddish that says "chazafis kosher." What does that mean? The pig sits like this with his feet out and saying, "Look, I'm kosher," because his hooves are split, but he doesn't chew his cud, and he's actually mentioned befirush in the Torah not to eat. But anyway, yeah. Those are my 3 stories.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
Amazing.
and you said about it wasn't fins and scales, it was gills and scales. The fish, gills.
In the Gemara, it talks about it using it to swim. So that's a fin.
Oh, interesting. I always
Yeah.
thought it was gills.
No, here. I think I have it open. 1 second. I'll show you. Well, we didn't do it in the Gemara yet, but in the Mishnah. Hold on, where was it?
I learned it as fins and scales.
Fins, nachon? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also did. Wait, I can't. 1 second. Let me just see if I can find it quickly, and then if I can, I'll show it to you because they describe it as ways.
Because almost all fish have gills. I don't know any fish that don't have gills.
Yeah,
And sharks
yeah,
have gills.
yeah,
And sharks are
And
definitely
shark
on
is not.
yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, I think it spins. I mean, that we'll go into much more detail next time. But it talks about what is the fin. It helps it swim. So I think that it is fin
Yeah, it is
and not.
fin. I
Yeah,
see that the translation is fin. Sorry,
yeah.
I was
No
under the wrong
problem.
impression.
No problem.
So
Okay,
great.
excellent. So see you everyone next week. Bezrat Hashem. Have a good week. An easy and meaningful fast. Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. The fast is on Thursday. So it should just be a meaningful fast. And see you next week.
Have
And
a
good night.
great week, Rebbitzin.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.